Welcome to Verses of the Universe, the Rubaiyat by Omar Khayyam, Spiritual Vintage Part 2 of 2 on Words of Wisdom. Omar Khayyam was a Persian mathematician, astronomer, philosopher, and a poet. He was renowned in his country for his scientific achievements, and a few centuries later he became known in the West through a translated version of his poetry by an English poet. Omar Khayyam was born in 1048 in Nishabur, present-day Iran, where he received his education, which he later continued when he moved to Samarkand in today's Uzbekistan. Later on, Khayyam returned to his hometown where he taught and worked as an astrologer. A famous invention of his is the Jalali calendar, which became a base for other later calendars and is considered to be more accurate than the Gregorian one. His passion for mathematics, algebra, and geometry inspired many books of his discoveries in the subjects. Yet the most familiar of Omar Khayyam's milestones in the West rests upon his collection of more than 1,000 poems. In the 19th century, the verses were found and translated for the first time into English by the English poet and writer Edward Fitzgerald, who named the edition the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Rubaiyat meaning quatrains. The first edition of the poetry was published in 1859 in London. The rhymed verses reveal a poet who was in deep contemplation in search of the truth about the nature of reality, the universe, and the depth of the human spirit. Let us now continue with the reading of Omar Khayyam's fascinating and thought-provoking poetry from the collection The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. It is important for one to know about the twofold meanings of Khayyam's poetry, as he invites the reader to make the connection between the inner and the outer. By using earthly figurative expressions, he beautifully paints the more subtle perceptions of the soul. An often used metaphor here is wine, which represents the vintage of divine intoxication, a state of pure bliss of the soul while in meditation on the beloved. The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam by Omar Khayyam, interpreter Edward Fitzgerald. I think the vessel that with fugitive articulation answered once did live and drink, and the cold lip I kissed, how many kisses might it take and give? For in the marketplace one dusk of day, I watched the potter thumping his wet clay, and with its all obliterated tongue it murmured, "Gently, brother, gently, pray." As then the tulip for her morning sup of heavenly vintage lifts her chalice up, do you devoutly do the like, till heaven to earth in virtue like an empty cup? Perplexed no more with human and divine, tomorrow's tangle to the winds resign, and lose your fingers in the tresses of the cypress slender, minister of wine. And if the wine you drink, the lip you press, end in what all begins and ends in, yes, think then you are today what yesterday you were, tomorrow you shall not be less. While the rose blows along the river brink, with old Khayyam the ruby vintage drink, and when the angel with his darker draught draws up to thee, take that and do not shrink. When you and I behind the veil are past, oh, but the long, long while the world shall last, which of our coming and departure heeds, as the sea's self should heed a pebble cast? Would you that spangle of existence spend about this secret? Quick about it, friend. A hair perhaps divides the false and true, and upon what, prithee, may life depend? Whose secret presence through creation's veins, running quicksilver-like, eludes your pains, taking all shapes from Ma to Mahi, and they change and perish all, but he remains. But if in vain, down on the stubborn floor of earth, and up to heaven's unopening door. You gaze today while you are you, how then tomorrow when you shall be you no more? Waste not your hour, nor in the vain pursuit of this and that endeavour and dispute. Better be merry with the fruitful grape, than sadden after none or bitter fruit. You know, my friends, how long since in my house for a new marriage I did make carouse, divorced old barren reason from my bed, and took the daughter of the vine to spouse. For is and is not, though with rule and line, and up and down without, I could define, of all that one should care to fathom, I was never deep in anything but wine, divine ecstasy. Ah, but my computations, people say, reduced the year to better reckoning. Nay, 'twas only striking from the calendar, unborn tomorrow and dead yesterday. And lately, by the tavern door agape, came stealing through the dusk an angel shape, bearing a vessel on his shoulder, and he bid me taste of it, and 'twas the grape. The grape that can with logic absolute the 72 jarring sects confute, the subtle alchemist that can in a trice life's leaden metal into gold transmute. But leave the wise to wrangle, and with me the quarrel of the universe let be, and in some corner of the hubbub couched, make game of that which makes as much of thee. I must abjure the balm of life, I must, scared by some after reckoning ta'en on trust, or lured with hope of some diviner drink to fill the cup, when crumbled into dust. Strange, is it not, that of the myriads who before us passed the door of darkness through, not one returns to tell us of the road which to discover we must travel too. The revelations of devout and learned, who rose before us and as prophets burned, are all but stories which awoke from sleep. They told their fellows, and to sleep returned. I sent my soul through the invisible, some letter of that afterlife to spell, and by my soul returned to me and answered, I myself am heaven and hell. Heaven, but the vision of fulfilled desire, and hell, the shadow of a soul on fire, cast on the darkness into which ourselves, so late emerged from, shall so soon expire. For in and out, above, about, below, 'tis nothing but a magic shadow show, played in a box whose candle is the sun, round which we phantom figures come and go. 'Tis all a checkerboard of nights and days, where destiny with men for pieces plays, hither and thither moves, and mates and slays, and one by one back in the closet lays. The moving finger writes, and having writ moves on, nor all thy piety nor wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out a word of it. And that inverted bowl they call the sky, where under crawling cooped we live and die, lift not your hands to it for help, for it as impotently moves as you or I. Yesterday this day's madness did prepare, tomorrow's silence, triumph, or despair. Drink, for you know not whence you came, nor why. Drink, for you know not why you go, nor where. Ah, love, could thou and I with fate conspire to grasp the sorry scheme of things entire, would not we shatter it to bits, and then remould it nearer to the heart's desire?